I honestly think that you need to. A lot of people want to do it on their own, and it's like you're only gonna get so far, and it's not very far at all if you're focusing on trying to do everything yourself. I've talked about it with my team here too, where we are able to do the work of a man with 8 hands when we're doing that. There's 4 of us, there's 8 hands involved. You're multiplying your hands, you're multiplying the ability you're allowed to take advantage of the hours that you have allocated in a day, which is really nice, right? People talk about, oh, I work 16 hours. It's like, yeah, well, if you had 2 employees, you'd only work an 8-hour day, and 16 hours worth of work would have still got done. And it multiplies. Welcome to Maker's Legacy. My name is Michael DeFazio, where I help makers of all kinds grow and scale their businesses, creating a legacy for their families and their communities through the work that they do with their hands and the profit that they make. Today, we got Matt Dermott from Beaten, Ontario. What's going on, man? How are you today?
Very good today. We're already 1 delivery deep this morning and killing it.
You already did the delivery this morning? It's 9 a.m.
We already delivered a table and a bench at 8 a.m. this morning and rushed back so I could be here with you.
That is incredible, man. The client was all good with you being there for 8?
The client wasn't even there this morning. They were actually taking their daughter to a hockey tournament in Cleveland. They let me in the house this morning, delivered. I sent them pictures, but yeah, no one was there even to greet us. We just in and out, and that's we were lucky. It was in Beaten, so 5-minute drive from the shop.
That is perfect. I've done a couple deliveries like that before, where it's like, here's the garage code, go in the house, deliver it, set it up, and then just be gone and be done with it. It's kind of nice, but I always like dealing with the clients, man. I love my clients.
Well, of course, yeah, of course.
Super cool, man. So yeah, I bought some wood off you before. The company is Beaten Barnwood, and you guys do like a lot of reclaimed wood stuff, right? Like, is that kind of, would you say that's your main focus?
Well, yeah, I guess when we started out, it definitely was the main focus. Kind of barn board was, really in. We got into reclaimed, and it kind of took off, like a rocket. Over the last 10 years, the market kind of changes, and so although we do still specialize in it, it is not quite the percentage of the business it once was 10 years ago, but it just kind of goes in little pockets, right? Whereas if you asked the question a month ago, I would have said we didn't have a whole lot of barn board projects on the go. If you look in the shop today, we have 5-6 barn board projects on the go right now. So it's just, go with the flow.
100%. It's exactly like I had, man. My company was Michael DeFazio Reclaim Artistry, and that was the whole point behind that name, was that we're gonna take old things and use them to make new things. And the reclaimed wood, when I first started 13 years ago, was super popular. Like, everything was reclaimed, everything. And yeah, watching the trends change over the years has been a very interesting thing to pay attention to and to understand, because honestly, my personal opinion, I love the reclaimed wood. It's my favorite to work with because it's the most unique every time.
Yeah, me as well. You never know what you're gonna get, right? Every project's different. Anyone can ask for, a white oak table, and it'll look almost the same as the next white oak table. You get something reclaimed, and you'll be able to tell somebody you have a table that's never going to be the same again. So
100%, you're nailing that one on the head, man. So how do you understand and learn about the trends? Because that's something that I've experienced. I went from reclaimed wood to live edge slabs to live edge with epoxy, and now we're making this shift into like mid-century modern / dimensional lumber. How are you paying attention to, or how are you learning what's happening with the trends? How are you learning what your clients want?
Well, I'm guessing the same as you. I work with some interior designers, but as well, even just looking through Instagram or Facebook, you can kind of just see what is popping up as it goes along. I'm lucky enough that everything we do is custom, so I don't have to be spot on or pinpoint on at any given time, because I'm only ever making what a client is asking for and telling me. It's not my job necessarily to keep them, in the center of the lane. It's to keep them from going in the ditch. So, as long as we're kind of, running the road, I'm happy to let them, decide what we're going to do. Of course, I see how, again, whether it's interior designers asking me to build them something, the pictures I'm getting sent from clients, it kind of just runs itself out that way. Again, if I was running a showroom, it'd be completely different, right? I'd have to be ahead of that game, whereas I have the fortune to be slightly behind, because all I'm doing is dealing with the client's wants or needs.
It's kind of like you almost have to play a little bit of yes man. Like, can you build this? Yes. Can you build that? Yes. Yeah. And then you figure out how it works. Because like, that's honestly, every time I've done that, it's just really pushed our crew. It's pushed our limits in the form of quality, in the form of new techniques, new designs. Like, by being a yes man to a certain point, I find like there's a lot of benefit there. Do you have any designers that you work with specifically that are really pushing you in a way where you're like on the edge of maybe not being able to do it, or it's like a whole new world for you?
Yeah, actually we just finished taking on our biggest project to date, but also the one that was the furthest from my comfort zone. Most of the stuff that we've done is slightly less than fine furniture. You know, I've kind of been able to umbrella my work under rustic, in which case, you know, we're able to make really, really great things that don't have to have the polish, let's say, the nth degree that, you know, again, super high end would entail. But as the market goes in a certain way, again, you roll with the punches a little bit. So we ended up just doing 4 white oak beds for a huge Airbnb, also 4 sets of bunk beds. So, you know, that included staircases. This was like high-end polish, you know, and again, those are kind of things where at some point you just take your time, right? You know, you kind of, it's not that whether the skill set is there or not, but when you do things like that, I found for myself, it's just like a trial and error, but you take your time and hopefully those errors are minimal, right? But yeah, that's kind of the most recent one, but that's kind of how the business grows. That's how you grow yourself, right? You always kind of be pushing that limit. And probably like yourself, there are times, I don't have a spray booth at my shop specifically, so there are times when if you need a cabinet grade finish, that's something that you send out. We still rely on other people in the community to handle those things that we are not specialized in or specialized in yet.
100%, man. Like we did something very similar too. Like we have our team in-house and then we have our team that is like outside of the shop, right? Like our subcontractors that we work with every week. We, you know, between metal fabrication, finishing, custom stains, like there's all sorts of things like that. Like there's 2 types of teams.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to hear a little bit more about your story. I know I want the people that are listening to hear your story also. When did you know that you were going to be able to support yourself as a business owner, building custom furniture, doing what you're doing?
I was very fortunate that I got to transition from another job. I actually still have that job. I sell some real estate, and I've had my real estate license for 15 years. There are ups and downs in the real estate market, and even as a new real estate professional, there are more downs and ups. You just don't ever hit the ground running as hard as you'd want to. So as a hobby, as a side kind of thing, I kind of got into doing some woodwork. I was able to work out of my own garage for a while, just as a fun thing. We took on, you know, 1 project, 2 projects, you know, then it was 3, then someone asks if you can do this. The next thing, you know, whether you've done it before or not, and you kind of tinker around. So I was able to kind of supplement one with the other and then the other and back. So whereas, you know, when I started, I did real estate, I still do. Now I'm in the shop 60 hours a week with employees there. That is kind of how it's gone, right? You know, it kind of grows. At one point, it might have been 25% of, you know, my income. Then it was 50, 75. And now I think more of real estate as a fun hobby. Happy to help friends and family, but my concentration is on the woodworking, the furniture business, and the employees there. And, you know, fortunate is just down the road from my house, so it can kind of play on itself for that availability when needed, whether or not it is for real estate or if it's just as simple as coming home for lunch.
100%. That's amazing, man. So that's one of the things that I've been very fortunate to get into. Like I've never sold real estate as like an agent or anything, but my work after work, what I used to call it, was like the buildings that I built in our area down here. I know you've come down to the shop and you've seen the area that we're in. It was kind of we'll call it a forgotten neighborhood for a very long time, but I've been able to like buy and acquire and fix up and rent out a lot of these buildings down here, and it's been an amazing thing. So I totally get how like something like real estate would be a fantastic, I guess, side hustle. I mean, it depends, right? It's kind of like some people would say their whole life is based around real estate, and then they have some side hustle like woodworking, but you've kind of gone the other way with it, where you took the real estate and now that's kind of like the side piece.
Well, it always evolves too, right? Like I would never call myself Superman, where I get to go run and put on a suit in the middle of the day, because he does the opposite. But that's what I'm fortunate to do, right? You know, having guys at the shop, I can also, if need be, go put on a suit and go do whatever I got to do. But I guess that's the benefit of the business, even in general, right? You know, it's anything that gives you that freedom, flexibility.
100%. So you tell me that you got some employees, so tell me about that. I talked to a lot of custom furniture builders, and a lot of them are afraid of employees. They're like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with the headache. And for me, me, I've always felt like I wouldn't have been able to do half as much as we were ever able to do, like culture-wise, career-wise, profit-wise, like just volume-wise of work that was coming out of this building without them. Like without those guys, I would have never got here. So I can't see the other way where I'm like, how would you not want how would you not want employees? Like how do you handle your employees? Like how do you view your employees at your shop?
Well, I guess in the lowest term, I mean, they're kind of tools of the business as well, and you use their skills and their abilities and their knowledge to help go along, right? So whether or not it's, some sort of expertise, but I hear the same thing, right? Some people talk about what employees actually cost, and the idea of an employee is to help you and make money, right? So when I first got an employee, I was really busy for a little bit. I hadn't had one, and I told a guy I could probably take him on for 10 or 15 hours a week, and I'd be able to offer him little money at that time. That was almost 10 years ago, and he started one day at lunch, and then the next day I said, do you want to come in the next day? And ever since then I've had an employee. It just kind of as soon as you have that benefit, you realize that you never go back. So different employees are at different levels. You rely on them for fairly simple things at the start, whether it's just doing some sanding and or some finishing, up to doing some building and or again on and on and on, right? So even I've had employees that were semi-retired before. I've had employees that have had totally different ranges or skill sets, and they've come in to learn, and even some students from the local high school that they want to come in and be taught and kind of grow with the business as well. Right now I have one great employee that is still learning, but he's gone the furthest that any have. I'm starting to rely on him for more than just the finish, the sanding, just the day-to-day work. I ask his opinion on most things because, again, like two heads are better than one. We still have other employees sometimes that still do some of that more basic work, but as people grow together and businesses grow, I found that I'm having more successes leaning on other people as well.
100%. I honestly think that you need to, right? Like a lot of people want to do it on their own, and it's like you're only going to get so far, and it's not very far at all if you're focusing on trying to do everything yourself.
Only so many hours in a week.
100%, right? And I've talked about it with my team here too, where we are able to do that, like the work of a man with 8 hands when we're doing that, right? Like if there's 4 of us, there's 8 hands involved. You're multiplying your hand, you're multiplying the ability you're allowed to take advantage of the hours that you have allocated in a day, which is really nice, right? People talk about, I work 16 hours. It's like, well, if you had 2 employees, you'd only work an 8-hour day, and 16 hours worth of work would have still got done. And it multiplies, right? So the bigger your team gets, the more volume you're able to do. And when I'm teaching my students now, like about profits and whatnot, it's like, if it's a percentage based, get your top line up. Because if you're working on a percentage for your profit, just keep boosting the top line, because that profit will grow if you're taking care of that percentage on the bottom end. Right? So, I've always taken on students from the high schools, from the colleges. I feel like it's kind of our duty, right? We have to teach our skills to this younger generation because no one else is teaching them. So how do you find, because I know the challenges that I've had, and I'll talk about those after I learn yours, but like what is some of the challenges that you've had when it comes to facing, someone who is super green, right out of high school, doesn't know how to swing a hammer, might even not know how to push a broom? Like, how do you handle growing those people into a useful tool in the shop, like you were explaining?
Well, there's not a right or wrong answer there. In any case, I've had the luxury of time. And so I think with anything, if you start out slow, with goals, if you subdivide your goals into smaller goals, then you can kind of, make those like incremental increases in, productivity, right? So if it's as simple as just teaching someone how to sand on their first day, then, after a week or 2, you maybe don't have to explain it every time, and you go a little bit further, right? There are, sanding is kind of the most basic of shop details. And so it gets old, but I think if you kind of, you show them little bit by little bit, because you can sand a piece of wood at whatever grit or up to whatever grit, you get some fine light out there, they're going to still see some swirls, right? So, the first day they don't have to learn about swirls. They can learn about that after a couple days. But I find that, if someone can feel like they're growing a little bit, then that kind of gives them a sense of, accomplishment, even if they are doing the most mundane task in the shop. But it all has to start somewhere. And, you know, again, whether it's sweeping the floor or it's sanding, you know, it's kind of the bottom of the totem pole. And, you know, as good as you are, the gooder, or the quicker you move up, and or just the more skills that you learn, right? So sometimes you still got to sand, even me going into the shop on a Saturday because I want to get another coat on a table so I can deliver it Monday, I still got to sand, right? So it's kind of, you know, you just kind of incrementally build that up.
100%. So when it comes to employees, things start to get complicated. I'm sure you've experienced that, just because there's more brains, there's more he said, she said, there's things like that happen. So how do you stay organized job-wise when you are, you know, when you have multiple people that are putting their hands on the project, right? Like how, from client giving your deposit saying, yes, I agree, to us building X, Y, and Z, how do you organize the job through there, and how do you kind of communicate everything to your team?
When I started, wanting to be more hands-on and have more control and ownership over every single little aspect, I found I wasn't communicating as well. So it's one thing to have 20 parts in the shop and then tell an employee this is getting stained red, blue, green, whatever it is, and that's the only thing that they know about. So as things have gone on, I've started letting employees in more on the goal, the aspect, the greater plan is here. So whether or not it's showing them shop drawings or showing them the notes that I've taken from those clients. So, you know, instead of handing them a piece of wood and saying this needs to be sanded and then painted blue, this is the job, this is what it looks like, this is the size, do you have any input? So that when those parts go through them, again, whether it's sanding or staining, they can see that this is whatever it is. And of course then those expectations, you know, not that everything shouldn't be close to perfect, but you know, the backboard on a entertainment unit doesn't need to maybe be sanded up to 500 grit when it's going up against the wall, where the inside needs to be sanded as good as the rest of the project. So once they know what's actually happening, they have a sense of that ownership, even if it's just in a small part. And when they know what's going on, they're able to just better tackle the project either way.
True. So how do you, I mean, yes, I've been there, I've done that, I've been down that road. Are your team members talking to the clients also, or are you like the main point of contact and they kind of look to you for all the answers for the project?
At this point, again, because I go between 1 and 2 employees, or we'd call it 1.25 and 1.5 employees, depending on the given week and what kind of work we have to do, I'm the main point of contact. So, I mean, and that's why communication is so important, is that I have to convey all of the wants and needs that I see and hear from a client. You know, my employees rarely work weekends, almost never, and a lot of my client meetings are after hours and on weekends because that's when most people are available, you know, after they've finished their job. So, you know, what I take from them is hands-on. You know, we're in the shop looking at things one-on-one, and so, you know, sometimes it's easy as saying they've picked out, you know, Benjamin Moore paint or stain -10, whatever it happens to be, and you can say that. Sometimes it's about talking about how they want it slightly less brown, grayish-ish. So a lot of that is still on me just because of the size of the shop. Also, to be honest, that's the part I enjoy the most. Like you were kind of saying at the start, it's nice to actually talk to those clients one-on-one. I find that still kind of the most fulfilling part. So, you know, back to the table I delivered this morning with no one there. It was easy, you know, quick in and out. I'll have to wait for a couple days till they're back from Cleveland to hear that they love their table. Now, I know they came in and looked yesterday and they do like it, but you know what I mean, right? It is, those interactions are what, kind of are part of that fulfillment, right? I could tell you that I love making tables, but really what that is in the end is loving to make people happy about the tables they're getting.
100%. You know, like I always kind of have this thing, like I just want to make my client cry. Like I want them to be so in love and so excited that they cry. And I know some of the guys that I talk to, they've had these experiences. I've done it once. We've delivered a ton of projects. Just one time, you know, and I'll never forget that. But, you know, I've delivered thousands of tables now, and it's not something that I got every time, but, you know, I got one. I got to feel good, super good one time.
You get some hugs sometime too.
Oh, yeah. Hugs, coffees, you know, I got some cookies and a muffin maybe one time. Like our clients are great, man. Like I love working for people, and I love people. So how do you find, or how are these people finding you how are these awesome people finding you? Like the people that want to give you a hug after you're done your project, or where are you finding the best clients, because you and I both know not all clients are equal. There's going to be some that are great and some that deserve a pain in the ass tack. There's certain clients that need that, but it's just to save your own butt, honestly, because the ones that need a pain in the ass tax are going to demand a lot more from you, so you need to pay for that. So how are you finding the good ones?
Well, and to be honest, I've been fortunate enough. I mean, there are downsides to not being in a big city, but there is an upside to being in a small town. So this kind of grew organically, and not necessarily that the clients were all from Beaten or the surrounding areas, New Tecumseth, Allison, Tottenham, Bradford, any of those places. But when word of mouth starts, usually what happens is, or what I think has happened in my end, is that, kind of good people deal with good people, deal with good people. And when you come recommended, it's almost the reverse as well, in that when you have good clients, the clients that they've recommended to you are also probably good clients. So I've never had to advertise. I've never, I like to do little street festivals. There's specifically one here in Beaten, more on a fun end of things, because they're rarely the huge payoff that you'd hope. We don't sell trinket type stuff, so it's not a moneymaker day. But the clients, again, have been fortunate enough that it's been word of mouth. Of course, it always grows organically through social media. You don't know who you're going to actually deal with at the end of the day. But, I've been super fortunate dealing with good clients. I think I've been in the business for 10, 12 years. After about the 6-year mark, I would have been hard pressed to tell you I've had one tough client. Since then, the market evolves, and as the area that I provide to expands, so does that client base. So, I wouldn't have a great answer to say where you find those good clients, but, I've been fortunate on that end, just kind of working word of mouth. Again, treating people right is also paramount, because there are some people that, you're meeting new people and you're spending a lot of money, and once in a while, you could say the wrong thing, or there's just a wrong impression of people, and attitudes go a long way. You get your back up a little bit, and a client can, what would have been great, be a different way. So yeah, I've always just found that if you have fun and you're polite to people, that a lot of clients are going to be good, whether or not you thought they were or not.
Well, 100%, right? And I know, all we can ever do is our best in every situation in life, right? And I think if your clients know and feel that, I think that they're more likely to understand where you're at, right? Let's be honest, man, mistakes happen, repairs need to be made. Wood can be a very
it's a pain,
it's a pain in the butt, right? It moves on you. It's a breathing material. So it's your table that I built, maybe it opened up or it split. It's how do we fix that? You have to make sure they understand that it's not necessarily our fault, but we will still take care of you.
Of course.
And I think that's part of life. Just providing. It's part of providing an incredible experience for them too, right? Because it's not just, sorry, the table's broken. That's what wood does. It is what it is. Have a good day. It's you're
providing
I've heard
what
more.
You said too about tables, and I kind of have the same thing, is that this is just a slab of wood that you're going to eat on, but really this is your whole world, right? Whether it's kids' homework, it's just family meetings, it's those family dinners where you actually all get together and talk. This table can last you your entire life. You can be part of it, and you're part of that process. So again, if you make people interested in that, and again, there are some people that they'll just order a table over the phone and it gets shipped out, great. But the more that you can interact with people and make them feel like this is a fun process, part of again, what you might be sitting at 20, 30, 40 years, then again, if you look invested, they'll be invested, and again, it's part of it, makes a process better.
Well, 100%. I don't know about you, but I was raised at a dining room table. We spent a lot of time at the dining room table. Everything happened there. Homework, food. You didn't leave the dining room table till your food was gone, kind of thing. And I try to I see what's happening in the world and whatnot, and I'm how can I help bring families together again? How can we kind of save the world by making an incredible table?
One dining table at a time.
Yeah, well, it's creating the heart of the home. I've always said that the dining room table was the heart of the home.
Yeah.
And it's because everybody, it's the meeting point. It's ground zero.
Yeah, and usually there's not a TV right beside the table, so you can peel people out of the living room for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what's always driven me too, man. Is knowing that you're being a part of something so much bigger than just making a table.
Yeah.
All right. So you're saying that you do a lot of trade shows too. You do the small trinket fest and everything. Like, how are you? So I mean, over the years, I've done a ton of art shows. We did some of the big art shows down in our area in Windsor and many others, Toronto, all sorts of things. But I always found that it's not what you sold the day of, it's what you sold for months afterwards. How are you, like, what would be a tip or two that you could give our listeners on what is like the best way that you've taken advantage of the audience after the event?
I'm not sure I have a great answer for that one. I mean, I think, and I could be wrong, but engagement with anything, right? I mean, it's, you know, in those type of situations, you're usually trying to get numbers, email addresses. You know, there are people that will walk by and chat, and they might think something that you've done is great, but they also still might be a person that just thinks it's great and walks by. You know, if you can get, you know, information off people and engage with them, you know, again, whether it's personally direct, you know, either phone call, you know, email, that's great, that works. Whether it's through social media, just talking about how the event was great and about how you're able to help those people, I think that's good as well. But, you know, I think it's tough, right? Because there are only so many people that love the idea of being sold. I've been fortunate enough that I haven't had to do a lot of direct hard sales because of the way that I am in the community, that there are people that say, let's go get a table from Matt. So I've never actually felt that need to really push in that direction. But I still think it always comes back to engagement, right? If someone sees you rather than going on to a, you know, xyzwood.com to buy a table, there's always that opportunity. So I think it's about that engagement, right? You know, if you are yourself interacting with somebody, they're happy about that, because there are so many aspects in life right now where people do not interact, you know, or you get a AI or a computer generated, you know, when you call one of the big telephone companies, you know, you never talk to anybody. So that engagement, for me, has been what has been the most important. And it's not even at a trade show or any sort of street festival. It's day-to-day in how the business works. When someone calls, I answer the phone, and when someone emails, you know, there must have been something going on that I didn't email back in 5, 10, 15 minutes. You know, sometimes you can't hear it over a saw, or you have a table in your hands delivering. But again, that's how I have always interacted with people, is ASAP, and actually mean ASAP, so that people are more often than not surprised that they've actually gotten someone to message them back, but also it was right after they messaged me. So that's where I found success in communicating with people.
That's awesome, man. So yeah, the trade shows, because like the trade shows, they're important because you're in front of thousands of people. Hopefully you're getting a good trade show. There's thousands of people there. And then it's like, and then after the trade show, you're like, okay, great, now what?
Yeah.
So I know for me, we always used to give away freebies and whatnot, raffles and things like that, just to get numbers. But the whole idea, like you said, was to talk to the people. And I was never there to sell anything, right?
No.
Like I've never done any hard selling. It's not really something that I think is necessary for what we're doing. Obviously, there's some aspect that we have to go through, because sometimes we need to help people help themselves in what you're doing, because you know there's a better option, right? And a better option might cost more, this and that, whatever. But when it comes to the trade shows, I always used to talk to the people as much as I can, trying to avoid, you know, the hobbyist woodworker that just wants to talk your ear off for 10 hours at the trade show, right? You kind of have to find your way out. Too. Oh yeah, probably the same guy for sure. But you know, one of the things I always used to do, which I thought was which was an absolute game changer, is obviously everybody has access to the raffle, right? Whether it's a charcuterie board, a coffee table, whatever it was, offer something that they can win for free via raffle. But on their ballot, you control the ballots, right? So the people that would come up to me, I would talk to them about the table, the coffee table, ask them if they're renovating or building a house or whatever. And after that conversation, they would fill out the ballot, and then I would write, you know, Susie, or is building a house, is very interested in a coffee table, and then I would put her ballot in the raffle thing, whatever, right, in the hat. And when I got home the next day, I could call her.
Yeah, and we make shop notes like that as well. You know, for example, we had an open house try to do an open house every couple of weeks. You know, we have coffee there and some cookies, and clients come in and chat. So, you know, yeah, a lot of those interactions are detailed, because then, yeah, when you do talk to them, and again, like you'd see in any TV show about sales, you have a Rolodex with, you know, kids' names and all the rest of that. I mean, it's not quite so cheesy as as that. But, I think, again, what you're getting back to is being able to recall and chat with people. So, when you can connect with them, when you have any sort of recollection of what they're doing, it's that much more important, right?
Well, it's like, it also allows you to better help them, right? People just get busy. Like, they forget, you know, like this might be super important, but they just forget. It's like, if you can help them by providing them with what they actually need, with taking off a ton of stuff off their plate, it's not hard sales. You're literally doing them a service.
Well, and so we've worked with interior designers, and I never push this direction, but it's also, there are some clients that it's easy to go into one of those big box stores and you get table ABC in color 1, 2, 3. So they have very few choices. At the shop, sometimes that's daunting, right? People haven't bought custom furniture before. So whether or not it's interior designers and or stylists that we work with that can help them with that. But of course, like you said, even at the start when we were talking about design and style trends, I've always said, like I said, it's not my job to keep them in the middle of the road. It's to keep them off the ditch, so we can help them navigate through that process, right? The more you listen, and the better you can be.
I love that. I love that saying so much, man. That's such a fantastic way to look at it, because you're absolutely right. There is no middle of the road, even.
No, we've made some really, really fun, silly, weird things, and that's okay. That's what we're here to do. We're trying to make someone else's vision come alive, but they've all kind of fallen in the aspect of being normal and suitable and will work and structurally sound. But yeah, the idea is that, we're just trying to get your job done.
100%. That's super cool. So you mentioned the Rolodex with the kids' names and all that stuff. Like, how are you? There's a lot of apps that we're probably using. You're probably using too, right? Even if it's just an invoicing software and stuff like that. How are you keeping track of your clients? Like, how are you keeping in relationship with your clients, like as the years go by? I know for us, if we do our job right, my clients don't typically need to come back to me for that specific thing again.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you keep in contact with them so when they need their coffee table, they still think about you first?
It goes in ebbs and flows. We really try to post to social media, whether my rule is every day, but I know in reality there's been lots of times where we've missed a week. We do try to post a lot, and I think that I think most people, when I see them, whenever they've come into the shop, they say, "Oh, we saw you posted this." So that's how we're trying to engage on the lower end of things, right? There are times where we reach out to clients. You met someone at the hardware store, at the grocery store, and they've mentioned wanting something, or just, "Hey Matt, we're going to get in contact with you about something." So you always want to follow up, on that sort of stuff. I think in general, the nice thing is, and whether it's email or any of the social media, that stuff is logged forever. So I always am going back and looking at what we've done in the past and those conversations, just to see how the evolution of that contact has gone, right? Not that you want to seem too, overly trying to do something specific, but, again, some of these clients you don't see for a couple of years. So, you want to then make yourself familiar with those projects that you've done. Whether, it could just be stain colors, right? Because when they ordered their harvest table 4 years ago, now their coffee table is going to be the same color, and you want to be able to touch on that it was dark walnut or whatever it happens to be. I'm lucky that there are clients that walk into the shop 8 years later, and I remember exactly what they've made. And I think, going back to some of the things we've already touched on, is that I'm as much customer focused as I am product focused. So some of those things are just second nature. All those software programs, they really help. But I think, kind of the things that you like and you want and are just things that you'll always continue to like and know.
Fair, for sure. I agree with that, to the point where it gets too painful to stay the same. Like, that's for me, right? Like, when we were talking about, when I asked you the question about how do you keep your jobs organized and like, does your team talk to your clients? Like, I had to change that, because that was starting to rip me in half. Because we always had 7 to 9 projects on the workbench at every given week, every given day. There was like 7 to 9 open jobs, small jobs and big jobs. And it got to the point where, like, every 5 minutes I was getting one of my other guys coming in here to ask me, what's the deal with this job? What's the deal with that job? And I was like, dude, I can't answer all these questions. I can't, right? So it drove me nuts, to the point where I had to change something. So we started using an app called Trello, and I have a full crazy built system on Trello now. It's all automated and stuff like that, but my guys operate off of Trello without me. And I use this analogy of, it's like a digital file folder, right? Or like a cup. And every time we make a change to a project, that change goes into the cup. Anytime a photo's added, it's in the cup. And then you move the cup around. So everybody has the same cup. Everyone's drinking from the same cup. Not very sanitary, but everyone's at least using the same cup.
Yeah.
So I ask these questions because, in the woodworking world, a lot of us are fantastic at building physical things. Me personally, I fell in love with building out business systems about 5 years ago, and I just absolutely loved just running a team and like building what the actual business was behind it. So I ask about the software because I want to know, like, have you made it through certain problems, like what I just explained, with a software solution, or like did some sort of organizational program help you at all?
To be honest, and maybe the answer is my business isn't there yet, just because of the size of the shop and the scale of what we do. We always have 5, 10, even sometimes 50. Or 15. It's easy to have, a couple mantles or whatever it is, and there's lots of projects on the go. It has its own hiccups, right? You have to run and get material. You have to go run and quote jobs. So there are some of those little small hiccups where things, they pause a little bit. I found that, it's easy to then move on to another job, but because I don't know if it's because I still enjoy as much as the actual wood part, dealing with those clients. There's kind of always, like I said, between it's 1 or 1.5, 2 employees, there's always needs to be that front-facing person, and right now it's me. So I would say part of my job is if I was probably half of that and half in the wood business, still running that business. And of course, that is part of the challenge, right? Because at some point, it's easy to build one piece of furniture and not have to run a business. But when you're running a business, you also have to be the accountant, the social media manager, the client relations person. You have to be HR. You have to deal, with all those things. So, at this point, I'm still balancing. I wouldn't say it's easy, not all the time. I'm lucky I enjoy it. But yeah, sometimes it is 40 hours of what people would call, work, but there's another 20 hours behind the scenes, whether or not it is payroll, all those other things. Probably if we were in any bigger of a shop or had one more specific full-time employee, we'd have to go that direction. And even now, it's not something that hasn't crossed my mind. It's just hard because you think about that challenge of letting go a little bit, but also that letting go has to coincide with having that much extra work, because if you're out there selling, you have to sell, and if you're going to hire another employee, then you almost have to have someone that takes that is able to complete that amount of work that you would have been able to do. So
it's very interesting you said that, because you come down to this question, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you build up more sales before you hire an employee, or do you hire more employees so you can go get more sales? The chicken or the egg, right? And I agree with you, man. It's been the hardest thing in my life. We had 7 guys working here at one point. We had a full-time designer. We had that was my team in-house. Outside, we had a delivery crew. We had a metal shop. We had those are my outside team, right? But I will say it's definitely hard, but I will say that it is the most worth it thing you could possibly do in your life, right? Because this kind of is going to lead up to the last question I wanted to ask you. What is the end goal for you in your wood shop, right? What is it? Because I'm talking about exit plan. What is your exit plan? At some point, you are going to have to make an exit, whether it's on your time or not, right? It's what is it? What does it look like? And I find it's a very hard conversation to have because, like I said, most of us don't even think that far ahead, especially as woodworkers. We just want to make the best possible product, but we're looking at our lives or our business as a business and not just a job. Where is it that you see your business in the next 10, 15 years? How do you see yourself at that point as a business owner? Because you won't be able to build forever. So what does that look like?
Yeah, I've never been asked the question before. Not that it hasn't slightly crossed my mind. I kind of joke with myself or my wife about it that, I've picked a retirement hobby while I'm still young, right? So all the old guys that come into the shop, or not the old guys, the 40 and 50-year-olds say, oh, I'd love to have this. I'd love to just retire and do this. So maybe the exit strategy is no exit, right? You kind of just build off into the sunset. More realistically, I don't know. I think that right now I still have a job. That job is part of the business. And so at some point, we're growing, we're doing more big projects. And as that goes, the job might entail kind of more what you're saying, is that you rely more on other people, in which case, maybe it is just in a strict managerial or a strict, kind of outside observer of that job at some point. It would be nice to be able to look at something and seeing how it's operating rather than being the person that's operating it. But yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure. I mean, 10 years is a long way away. Hopefully, I'm still successful at that point. Hopefully my clients, I'm still providing for them and they still want to come back. Hopefully we're just kind of clicking along. I don't know if this is kind of like a part B to the answer. I've always looked for or thought about there being that opportunity to get into more. The job kind of lends itself to not falling trees, but slabbing them up, having a sawmill and having a kiln, those type of things. So we're still looking at potentially growing. It's just, again, you said chicken or egg, and you kind of, whether it's making that leap. Also, I think that leap has to correspond with, what you're going to be passionate about still, because probably if you're not at least somewhat passionate, they're just things that you do every day.
100%, man. And like, I get this. Your story is a little bit different than mine, but when I kind of went full time, I mean, I'll tell this story on the podcast another day, but like there was a time where I had a full-time job for 11 and a half months. That was the only full-time job I ever had. And I had to get to the point where I started losing money going to work, where I had to make the jump to go full-time in my wood shop.
Yeah.
And it gets very, very, very tricky, and you have to go deep inside yourself to figure out how to make that next jump from where you're already at, because you're already in it. So it's like, okay, I'm comfortable right here. How do I rip myself out of it? Literally rip myself out of this comfort to go stand on the other side of the room, because I need to grow this, because this needs to be sustainable whether I'm here or not. That's a very hard question to kind of like dig deep inside, but I love learning this thing about these other builders that I'm talking to. I want to know what it's like, because I only really have my experience. I've spent a lot of time around a lot of like successful people doing other things, but it's very different talking to people in our niche, like what we actually do here. And it's very interesting to see where our heads are at, because I know a lot of us, like, we're creative people, we make things, we are makers. It's like, well, how do you make a life where you're not working 60 hours? Like these super fancy people online want to talk about they got a jet, they live in some crazy house, but it's like, we live great lives right now too, but like, what is it outside of the 60-hour work week, the 80 hours that you're putting in, that you're building there? Like, what legacy are you making there?
Yeah. Well, I think that's really the end goal, right? A business, whether it's woodworking or something else, is just another little pebble along the way, right? So, obviously that is something that I've created. Only really ever owned businesses. Not to say I haven't worked for quite a few people in my life, but almost my entire life I've had a business, whether it was landscaping and lawn care when I was a kid. I didn't even have a driver's license. I was riding my lawnmower down the road cutting grass. But I think that's what you do is, you should, I never tell someone that their job or their business, their career should be an after fact, but you're right. The real building is in what you do when you go home, right? So I just, before we start chatting here, we have a new puppy, and, we're closing up a pool, and, me and my wife went on a trip this year, and that's something that the wood business has afforded me. But really, that's what we're trying to do, right? You kind of build a life and you make your job. Hopefully it fits in perfectly. I'm very lucky that I really enjoy what I'm doing. There's some people out there that all they have is a job. And so whether you call what we do or what I do a career or a passion, I'm still pretty excited to get up and go to work every day. And, if there isn't a brand master plan, I'm still pretty jacked about it being like that at the moment. So, but again, every day is a kind of a new adventure. And so, you just kind of keep going, right?
Love it, man. It's awesome hearing. I love hearing your story, man. You got a lot of energy. I feel like you and I could have this conversation for the next 5 hours, to be honest. I feel like even when I first met you, I was like, I could have a great conversation with this guy. So, dude, I'm really thankful you came on this show today. I'm thankful you sharing your story with us. I hope that everybody listening got some good pieces, because this guy definitely had some good knowledge to share with you guys. Matt, I want to say thank you. Beaten Barnwood out in Beaten, Ontario. Thanks again, man. And I hope that we get to continue our conversation another day.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. You have a good one.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.